In this video, we will be unpacking and assembling your GlobalTek conveyor for use in your production line. Shown here are the tools you will need when assembling your conveyor. You will also be provided a T25 Torx bit that is located in the packing slip. Once you have gathered your tools, we will move on to the unpacking process. The first step in the unpacking process is removing the lid and sides from the crate, leaving the conveyor on top of the pallet. Using the T25 Torx bit, remove the screws from the lid. You can now lift the lid off of the crate and set it aside. Next, remove the screws from each side of the crate. Once the screws are gone, remove the sides of the crate, leaving the bottom of the pallet with the conveyor exposed. Now that the lid and sides of the crate are gone, you can take inventory of the hardware. There will be a box next to the conveyor that has the hardware provided for the assembly. You will have 8 leg mounting screws, 8 leg mounting lock washers, and 4 adjustable feet. We will now move on to removing the conveyor from the pallet, beginning with the 2 end plates on both sides of the conveyor. First, locate the 4 screws that fasten the end plate to the conveyor. There are 2 on each side. Once located, remove all 4 screws using a 1/8 hex key. Once the end plates are removed, the next step is releasing the conveyor from the pallet. There are 2 screws anchoring the end of the conveyor to the pallet. Unscrew both screws from the wood using the T25 Torx bit. Once the end of the conveyor has been freed, reattach the 4 screws onto the end plate, but do not tighten completely. Repeat these steps to free the other side of the conveyor. Make sure to attach, but not tighten the 4 screws on the end plate. Next, we will set the height of the end plate. Setting the height ensures that the belt will not be rubbing against the end plate while moving. Using a spacer that is approximately 1/32 to 1/16 inches thick, insert it between the belt and the end plate, adjusting the height so that it is flush with the spacer. Once the height is adjusted, tighten the 4 screws using the 1/8 hex key. Next, we will remove the legs from the crate and attach the feet. Have a team member lift one side of the conveyor, while another team member removes the leg laying on the pallet. Repeat this step for the other side. Now we will attach the feet to the bottom of the conveyor legs. The height of the conveyor is adjustable from 35 to 40 inches. The further you thread the foot into the leg, the lower the overall height will be. Before attaching the feet, set the height adjustment nut on each foot to about the same position along the thread. By doing this, the conveyor will be approximately level to start off. In our example, we are setting the height adjustment nut approximately 1/2 inch from the bottom of each thread. Once the height adjustment nut is set, thread the feet into the bottom of the conveyor legs. Make sure to thread the feet all the way down until the height adjustment nut is snug against the bottom of the leg. The next step in the assembly process is attaching the legs to the conveyor body. First, you want to determine which holes on the conveyor you will attach the legs to. There are 2 positions, more toward the middle, or more towards the end of the conveyor. If you will be attaching an accumulation table at either end, you should choose the mounting holes toward the middle so you will have more room on both ends of the conveyor. If you will be mounting accessories in the middle of the conveyor, choose the outer mounting holes. Once you have chosen the holes for your setup, have 2 team members lift the legs upright, setting them with the feet resting on the floor. The 2 team members will now lift the conveyor and hold it over the legs. A 3rd team member will guide the conveyor down to the chosen holes. For our example, we chose the inside holes as shown here. You can now attach the legs with the mounting washers and mounting screws using a 9/16 wrench or socket. We will now ensure that the conveyor is sitting level. Place a leveling device on the top of the conveyor to see which way it needs to be adjusted. For our setup, we need to lower the right side of the conveyor. First, use a 15/16 wrench to loosen the height adjustment jam nut on the thread of the conveyor foot. Next, using a 7/8 wrench, turn the foot jam nut, which is solidly connected to the foot at the bottom of the thread, counterclockwise to lower, or clockwise to raise the conveyor. Make sure to alternate between the left and right foot in order to adjust the height of the conveyor and ensure it is level. Once level, use a 15/16 wrench to tighten the height adjustment nut on the top of each foot until taut. Once the conveyor is level, we will move on to adjusting the guide rails. The standard conveyor comes shipped with the guide rails and 2 mounting brackets already installed. Additional pairs of brackets are optional and can be purchased later if necessary. In our example, we are using a 3rd pair of brackets that were purchased separately. To adjust the width of the guide rails, loosen the lock knob on the top of one of the brackets and slide it away from the center of the conveyor. Repeat this step for all other brackets. Next, place 3 of the objects that will be moving down the belt onto the conveyor, one between each pair of brackets. Beginning on one end, loosen the lock knob on top of the brackets, move the guide rail towards the items on the conveyor, and tighten. Leave approximately 1/16 of an inch room on both sides of the object, allowing for any discrepancies and variances in object size to move freely down the belt. To adjust the height of the guide rails, start on one side of the conveyor and loosen both of the lower lock knobs on that bracket. Adjust the height of the guide rail so that it is center with the bottle. Once the guide rail is centered, tighten the lock knobs for that bracket. Move to the middle bracket and loosen both the lower lock knobs, letting the guide rail fall. Keep the knobs of the middle bracket loose, and move on to the end. Loosen both lock knobs on the end bracket and adjust the height of the guide rail so that it sits in the middle of the bottle. Once done, tighten both of the bottom lock knobs on the end bracket. Move back to the middle bracket and position the guide rail so that the height sits directly in the middle of the bottle. Make sure to tighten the bottom 2 lock knobs of the middle bracket. Repeat these steps on the guide rail on the other side of the conveyor. Your GlobalTek conveyor is now assembled and ready for your production line.